Okay, we began to learn yesterday about what happens if you missed a prayer. How do you make it up? So, sorry.
Copy paste.
Just having a bit of a technical glitch over here. Okay, fine. So we were in the section of davening, and yeah. So we first of all we said that when does one make up the prayer? One makes it right after the next prayer. We said that one can make up a prayer even if one was negligent, as opposed to if one was intentional. And we're up to halachas 3 and 4, which is that we only get one compensation. We only have one opportunity to make up what we missed. So compensation for an omitted prayer is valid only at the very next prayer. But if the delay was greater, compensation is no longer possible. For example, if somebody forgot to daven Shachris in the morning, and he forgot to daven Mincha, then he could make up what he missed by Mincha after Ma'ariv, but he won't be able to make up for Shachris. So again, there's a morning, afternoon, and evening prayer. You missed the morning one and you missed the afternoon one. Then by the evening prayer, you could make up for the afternoon, but you can't go two back. You could only go back one. Since 2 periods of prayer have passed and you failed to pray Shachris, neither at its designated time nor at the time of Mincha when you could have compensated for it. Okay, the next one is a little bit tricky. If it was Shabbos or Yom Tov or Rosh Chodesh. However, on the day when there is an additional Musaf prayer, if you forgot to daven Shachris, so even if you've already davened Mincha, meaning there was Musaf and then Mincha, so technically 2 prayers have passed. So you could still make up for Shachris because the Mincha and Musaf have the same deadline. They both go up until nightfall. But after the Musaf prayer, you may not compensate for the Mitzvah Shachris because having already mentioned the Musaf sacrifice, it is inappropriate as a make-up for the Shachris prayer. So usually when you're making up a Shemoneh Esrei, so you'll repeat the one that you're doing now an extra time for the one that you missed. But since the whole nature of the Musaf prayer is entirely different, you cannot do an extra Musaf prayer to make up for the Shachris. However, if it's not too late to daven Shachris, then you could go ahead and do that. Okay, the time for compensation, we did that. The nature of compensation. The minute tefillah can be made up only at the time of the next tefillah, but not after the time of the next tefillah. For example, if much time has elapsed since you davened the next prayer, which was due at that time, you can no longer pray the compensatory prayer tefillah for the one omitted, because the sages instituted compensation for the omitted tefillah only at the time you are occupied with the prayer due then. Because only while being occupied with prayers can you also make up for what you missed. In other words, what he's saying is in simple terms, if I forgot to daven this morning, and now it's time for Mincha, so while I'm davening Mincha, I could do an extra prayer for Shachris. But if I've already finished davening Mincha and I've moved on, then I can't randomly just do another Shemoneh Esrei, another Amidah. Rather, compensation has to be made up at the time of prayer. So if I missed the morning prayer, I could make that up at the time of the Mincha prayer. Okay. Number 6. So this is a little tricky. The makeup tefillah, meaning the one that you're using to compensate for what you missed, that you pray must be the same as the prayer at that time. For example, if you forgot to daven Mincha on Friday afternoon, and now it's Friday night, now it's Shabbos. So you might say, okay, I missed the weekday prayer, so maybe after davening the Friday night Shabbos prayer, I'll go back and daven the weekday prayer for what I missed. But it doesn't work like that because right now it's Shabbos. So now you'll do 2 Shabbos prayers, one for Shabbos and one for the Friday afternoon prayer. So this is actually an interesting scenario where you're davening for what you missed during a weekday, but since time has moved on and it's Shabbos, you're actually going to do 2 Shabbos prayers, one for Friday night and one for Friday afternoon. Okay. If being ignorant of the Vav Halacha, you said a weekday prayer as compensation, then you would need to daven Shemoneh Esrei a 3rd time. because it's out of place. And whenever you daven, you need to do what's appropriate for that place. So if it was Friday night and you realized, oh, I forgot to daven mincha, so now you go back and you do an extra Amidah for Friday afternoon. So you're davening a weekday prayer on Shabbos, and then you're mixing things up over here. You have a real challenge over here, not so kosher, because you're davening a weekday prayer on Shabbos to make up for the weekday. So that didn't work either. So you'll end up davening a third Shmoneh Esrei. It wouldn't be a fun evening, to say the least. Similarly, on the day before Rosh Chodesh, next Thursday is Rosh Chodesh. So let's say it's Wednesday afternoon, a person forgot to daven mincha. When it comes to Thursday night, you would say Ya'alev Yavo, which is what's added for Rosh Chodesh. Remember, we said whenever there was a time when we would bring a special offering of the Beis HaMikdash, we add the Ya'alev Yavo, which is on Rosh Chodesh or on the in-between days of Yom Tov. So Thursday night will be Rosh Chodesh. So you want to do two prayers, one for Thursday night and one for what you missed on Thursday afternoon. So you would mention Rosh Chodesh in both, also for the one that you're making up. If you have been Ma'ariv on Rosh Chodesh, requiring you to pray two Shachris Tfilos, and even if you inadvertently omitted Ya'alev Yavo, even during the second Shmoneh Esrei, you must repeat the Shmoneh Esrei, despite the fact that it is a compensation for the night. Okay, this is getting really tricky over here. And then you had a minute Ya'alev Yavo, you were not required to repeat the Tefillah, nevertheless, now it is day. Okay, let me say that in other words. Maybe I'll actually put it on the, let me go to the end and then I'll put it on the chart. If you have a Mincha on Shabbos here, you pray two weekday Shmoneh Esreis at Ma'ariv. However, in this case, there's a difference regarding the Atach and Antara prayer. Okay, you know what? Before we move on, let's talk about the Ya'alev Yavo. So let's put up the whiteboard. Okay, so you have, let's just say next Thursday night. Okay. Is Rosh Chodesh. Okay. And you forgot to pray. Okay. Now you want to wake it up Shabbos morning. Friday morning. Now it's Friday morning. Okay. And Friday morning you have two prayers. You have prayer 1 for Friday morning, and then you have prayer 2 for Thursday night. Okay, you with me? Yes. Now, on Thursday night, there's no requirement to say Ya'alev Yavo. There is a requirement, but if you forgot, you don't need to repeat the Amidah. That's something about nights. So let's put in that piece of information. If one forgot Ya'alev Yavo on Rosh Chodesh night, he need not repeat. However, excuse the tense. If one forgot Ya'alev Yavo on Rosh Chodesh day, then he does need to repeat. On Rosh Chodesh day, he needs to repeat. Okay, that's something we learned previously. If it's at nighttime, since that's not when Rosh Chodesh was declared, and you forgot to say Ya'alev Yavo, then you don't need to repeat. If you forgot Ya'alev Yavo during the day, then you would need to repeat because that's the time that the Rosh Chodesh was declared. So now let's put these two pieces of information together. So it's now Friday morning, it's Rosh Chodesh. The first prayer you daven for Friday morning, okay, and you included Ya'alev Yavo. And the second prayer, you forgot Ya'alev Yavo. So again, you're having a really tough Rosh Chodesh because you forgot to pray Thursday night, and now it's Friday morning, and when you're making up the extra prayer on Thursday for Thursday night, you forgot Ya'alev Yavo, Now, the halacha is you would need to repeat. You would need to repeat a third prayer. Why? Because since right now it's daytime, so right now you have an obligation for Ya'aleh v'Yavo. So although you're making it up for the night before, since right now it's during the day and you didn't say Rosh Chodesh, and right, this is the time when Rosh Chodesh was declared, so you would actually have to do a third prayer for missing Ya'aleh v'Yavo in the compensation prayer of Thursday night.
Do you want me to pay the 33,581.03
Okay.
to Milton factors or the 41,977.99?
Okay, that's now back to the Shulchan Aruch.
Okay, perfect. Sorry to disturb. Have a good night.
Okay. The next scenario is that
Which one, sir?
you forgot to daven mincha on Shabbos afternoon, and now Shabbos is over. Now, on the night in the prayer, the night prayer immediately after Shabbos, we mentioned Havdalah in the Shemona Esrei. It's called Atul Chaydan Tanu. There's a special insert of Havdalah that goes into the Amidah immediately after Shabbos. Okay, so now you might say, now you're davening two Shemona Esreis, one for Motzei Shabbos and one for Shabbos afternoon, the one that you forgot. So you're not going to say Atul Chaydan Tanu in both prayers. Why? Because Atul Chaydan Tanu is Havdalah. You only make Havdalah once in your prayers. You don't make Havdalah twice in your prayers. So since you're in the midst, since you already said Havdalah in your first prayers, you don't need to say it a second time. Okay. The same applies to the opposite situation. If you omitted Ma'ariv at the conclusion of Shabbos, and then you pray two Shachrises the next morning to make up. And during the make-up prayer, you said Atul Chaydan Tanu because originally it was instituted that Havdalah be said during Shemona Esrei. Oh, so here's an interesting one. So this is an exception to the rule. Here's where the compensation would be like what it was the night before, the prayer before, the prayer before. Okay, I'm going to move along because this is not quite complicated, and I don't want to dwell on it for too long because I don't want to lose you completely. Let's try to see if we could get to the end of the section today so that tomorrow we could move on to a new topic. Okay. If you earn at Mincha on Rosh Chodesh by omitting Ya'aleh v'Yavo, and the following day it is not Rosh Chodesh, and as a result, even if you pray two Shemona Esreis at Ma'ariv, so let's say Rosh Chodesh is one day, it's Wednesday night, Thursday. Let's say Thursday night is no longer Rosh Chodesh. So now it's Thursday night, and you forgot to daven Mincha on Thursday afternoon. So, sorry, you said you daven mincha, but you forgot to say Ya'aleh v'Yavo. So again, you daven mincha on Thursday afternoon, and it was Rosh Chodesh, and you forgot to say Ya'aleh v'Yavo. And now Thursday night, it's no longer Rosh Chodesh, and you realize that you made a mistake with your last prayer where you would have had to repeat. So if you daven two Shemona Esreis at night, you're going to gain nothing. Why? Because you can no longer say Ya'aleh v'Yavo because Rosh Chodesh is over. So you're not going to make up a Shemona Esrei for the one that you said without Ya'aleh v'Yavo, because this one won't be able to have Ya'aleh v'Yavo either. So you won't be able to make it up at all. So again, to simplify that, if you davened on Rosh Chodesh and forgot to say Ya'aleh v'Yavo during the day, then you need to repeat. If you forgot to repeat, and now you've moved on to the next prayer and it's no longer Rosh Chodesh, then you would no longer repeat because you're making up for something that you didn't say, and you're not going to be able to say it now either because Rosh Chodesh has passed. Okay. Regarding the Musaf prayer, although its time period is the entire day till nightfall, which means that Ma'ariv would be the next prayer, nevertheless, Musaf cannot be compensated at night because the Musaf prayer was instituted based on the verse that the offerings of our lips replace cows, and once the time has passed, the sacrifice can no longer be brought. Meaning, since the whole nature of the Musaf is for this unique sacrifice, if you forgot to daven Musaf, then it's a lost chance. You can never make that up. You'll never be able to draw down the divine energy that that particular Musaf would have been able to draw down. Number 9, if you require 2 Shachris prayers or 2 Mincha prayers, and you're the Chazan, so you can fulfill your obligation when repeating the Shemona Esrei aloud. So that's another interesting scenario. Generally, we say that the repetition is just for somebody that doesn't know how to daven, or because the sage just instituted it. But if the Chazan actually had forgotten to daven the previous prayer, and he needs to daven Shemona Esrei, one for now and one to make up what he missed, then he can count his repetition of the Amidah for the prayer that he missed. And number 10, if you're in doubt as to whether or not you davened, in our time, since a voluntary Shemona Esrei is not said, you do not repeat the tefillah. So let me just give you a little bit of background about that. Originally, a person, if they wanted to daven an extra time, they said, oh, I'm feeling Hashem, you've just been so kind to me today. Although I already davened, I just want to daven again. I want to daven Shemona Esrei again. You just mean so much to me. So that used to be allowed. It was called a tefillas nedava, which means a nedava, a gift of a prayer of a voluntary gift where you say to Hashem, Hashem, I want to give you an extra prayer because of how much you mean for me. And then the person in that voluntary prayer would just need to add something in. Nowadays, we don't do that. Why not? Because we can't concentrate for more than a few seconds. And so we're concerned that if you're going to do an extra prayer as a gift, you're probably not even going to end up concentrating. And then the whole thing will be an embarrassing situation. Because let me give you another piece of information. If a person did not concentrate during the entire Amidah, meaning his mind was wandering from Dubai to the golf course, then technically he needs to repeat the Shemona Esrei. But you know why we don't do that nowadays? You tell me. Based on this logic. Because when he makes up for it and he does an extra Shemona Esrei because he wasn't concentrating the first time, he's not going to concentrate the second time either. And then he'll really make a mess out of the whole situation. So once upon a time, if a person wanted to daven an extra prayer, when I say an extra prayer, I don't mean just any prayer. I mean, if somebody wants to daven the Amidah second time, then that was a wonderful thing. And if a person wasn't concentrating, you would have to daven again. But nowadays, since our ability to concentrate is really, really poor, even when our phone is off and there's no WhatsApp messages coming in. So we don't do voluntary prayers. And similarly, if we weren't concentrating, we don't make it up. So on that note, the halacha used to be that if you're not sure if you davened, then daven again. And have in mind that if you've already davened, this is just a gift. But nowadays, I mean, you don't want to give a gift where you're not even concentrating. So therefore, we avoid that. We avoid the extra prayer. So we always try to have a take home from every shir, some kind of lesson. I guess firstly I could echo the lesson I gave last week, which was that the Torah has guidance for us in every situation. And if a person can feel he's ready for a bludgeon, he's completely confused, he's missing prayers, or the prayers he's making up, he's getting everything mixed up. So the Hashem still has guidance for him. There's a way out. In every situation that we find ourselves, there's always a solution. There's always a way forward, a way to grow, and a way to strengthen our relationship with Hashem and with each other. Thank you so much for joining us and wishing you a wonderful